Whoa. Here we are.
Now we got a countdown. We know when we're live.
We don't need to ask the question anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Week 254, isn't it?
Week 334.
Week 36.
Like this.
No, week 36, right?
And counting. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And LA is just going back on a little, not really a lockdown, but they already closed outdoor dining again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going backwards.
Because in America, that's how things go, right?
Yeah.
And things are opening up again in Europe, right? Or no?
No.
Well, it's become slightly more open in Spain, right, Ali? But in Germany, it's the actual opposite. It's now being extended. So
Yeah.
Are we live?
Yes.
We are.
Hey, welcome to episode number 34.
6.
Six.
Cheers.
Week 36. Cheers, everyone.
And
Cheers.
since Thanksgiving is a really big thing in the US, I'll wish you all a great Thanksgiving. It's rather a regular, normal day here for us in Europe.
Yeah, normal for you guys. You know, it's crazy because like this morning I had to make some last minute runs to the supermarket, and there was actually pretty dead compared to, I mean, obviously there's a pandemic, but like I would think that would be a little bit more like hectic at the supermarkets. It's kind of empty and the streets are
Is it like a bank holiday? Is stuff closed then, David?
Everything pretty much everything is closed. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a select supermarkets that stay open because people buy stuff last minute like me.
Yeah.
For the most part, everything is closed, man.
Yeah.
Why do you need a big holiday like 4 weeks before Christmas?
Good question.
I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of holidays throughout the year, but I guess through the seasons we have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Halloween's not really, I wouldn't consider Halloween a holiday.
Not really, because there's no time. Look at all the
Nothing
bank
closes
in the UK have.
Yeah.
How many bank holidays are there? Like 5, Matt?
In the UK, I mean, I don't think we have as many actually as Germany. I think like where I am in Berlin, there's always a holiday.
Well, there you go. There's a point. Germany has more holidays than we do.
Yeah.
I think Spain takes the cake, though. I mean, they have their holidays and have siesta. So everything is shut from like 2 to 4 or sometimes 2 to 6, 2 to 5.
Are there any big holidays in Europe before Christmas?
No.
No, huh?
No.
Yeah, well, Thanksgiving. Here it is.
Mo, do you want to talk about Thanksgiving?
To the people out there that don't know what Thanksgiving is, can you do a little quick breakdown for them?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to be historically accurate here, but I mean, we were discussing it earlier. It's supposed to be a celebration of the harvest before the long winter, and I believe the Native Americans kind of showed the pilgrims who had come over to the U.S. how to survive by planting corn and doing all the things to survive through the long winter. And that's traditionally why we celebrate it Some of us don't really like that holiday, specifically because those pilgrims ended up just turning around and backstabbing everyone, killing half the Native Americans, and ruining the culture and destroying the country. So it's not always, depends on what side of the table you're sitting on. It's not always the best thing to celebrate. That's for sure.
But
Especially because my wife is also half Native American, so it's not necessarily the most welcome tradition in our household, but it is an opportunity to get together with your family and have a dinner, and
that's more what it. That's what it turned into,
us.
Basically.
Yeah,
it was a test run for Christmas,
I guess. So Mo, do you guys do you still celebrate it? Like, do you do the whole turkey thing?
We do, and it's more of just like it's just more of a tradition to get together with family, really, at the end of the day. I mean, everyone's got such busy lives these days, and it's so hard to get together. So any opportunity that you can to get together with your family and spend time with them is a good opportunity. But at the same time, we like to honor the Native Americans in this country in the first place, and give them the respect that they deserve for what they've given to us. So, cheers to that.
Yeah, I think it's important to maybe give certain traditions new meaning and new context.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But there's no restrictions on the amount of people that can be in a gathering in the States at the moment. I mean, I saw these videos of
there definitely is
chaotic scenes in airports around the States. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, they I think they said there was no more than 10 people per household or something like that. I don't know.
Not even that, dude. They don't want you to have a Thanksgiving dinner with people that don't live in your house. They want you to stay home, and if you do, I think it said 1 or 2 families, and then eat outside and all this shit. But nobody's gonna do that.
Because we are pandemic fatigue.
Yeah. I mean, they had I saw something about there was 2.5 million people traveled through LAX for Thanksgiving, which is it's still way lower than last year, but people are flying everywhere, and they're making people sign these quarantine waivers when you land in LAX, saying that you have to quarantine if you're from here. So it's
they're not enforcing it, and they're not following up, but they're just
I don't know, yeah. And I think they said, didn't the police also say that they're not going to enforce it? They're just we got better shit to do. We're not going to force people gathering and for dinner.
Well, usually it works out for us because on Christmas I get to see one portion of my family that I don't get to see, and then Thanksgiving I get to see another portion. And usually it's a fairly large party. We usually have 50 to 60 people sometimes get together on Thanksgiving. But this year we all decided that it wasn't safe to get together. So for the first time in I don't know how many decades now, it's just me and my mother, my father-in-law, my wife, and my son, just the 5 of us. So it's definitely a dramatic change.
Yeah.
And I'm visiting family that it's the same people that I see all the time anyway. It's my brother and my mom and my sister. So no one new is in there. It's going to be very, very intimate.
Which
Nothing
is
crazy.
Probably a pretty smart move, because we gotta consider that there's more virus out there than ever before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's crazier. If we were cautious in April and June, this is a whole different level now.
Yeah, it's worse now in the US for sure. Much worse.
So everyone,
but don't you think?
Stay safe, wear a mask.
But this may sound stupid, but don't you think there's more cases now because more people are testing?
Probably.
Stop it, please.
It's kind of true, right? Compared to
I think
before,
more people have pandemic fatigue. That's why. There's more cases.
I'm not saying that it's not as bad as what it is, but I'm saying that the numbers are going higher because people can easily get tested. Before you could you can only get tested if you had symptoms. Now anybody can go in.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just don't seem to care. I just don't want to get sick, man. If that shit's out there, I don't want that shit, man. Fuck that. I don't even know if I'd survive it.
I ordered one of these. They measure the oxygen in your blood. It's called a pulse.
Yeah, we got one of those.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap on Amazon. I measured it just. I was curious actually how much oxygen I have in.
What's it called, Ali?
It's called a pulse oximeter, and
how's it work?
I got it on my finger now actually.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
So basically, any reading from 90 to 100, and you're good. Anything below, 95 to 100. Anything below 95, yeah, it's a bit iffy. And if it gets below 92, you may want to call a doctor.
Wow.
Does it have to do with COVID or just in general?
Did you feel the need? You need that, or you?
I have mild asthma, so I'm actually curious. What my oxygen levels are in my blood, and it's actually I read it's pretty cool to have one of these handy if you are experiencing some of the symptoms like shortness of breath, faulty breathing, whatever with COVID, and you want to wait till that last possible moment before you feel the need to go to a hospital and have them put you on a respirator and that whole stuff, routine. So
yeah. For anyone wondering, we're not sponsored by that company.
No, not at all. It's like $20, $20. It's pretty cheap.
Hey guys, I'm really, really, really excited for the show today. Really, about our guest. I'm the biggest fan of Luke Slater since I had my first Peace Rock record called Booster in my hands.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When
is the first time you ever met Luke, Chris? Do you know?
I don't really remember. I don't know. Maybe the early 2000s or something like this. I was probably shaking and being very nervous. And I was today. I think maybe he's not listening yet, but hopefully I think he's essentially, when you talk about techno, the techno that we're into, that we're doing, I think he is like up there, almost even alone with as a producer of the most iconic techno tracks out there in history of techno. I mean, this is like
he was one of the guys from the very beginning, from the late 80s, that paved the road that we're all treading down. So
totally. And versatility. What do you say?
Versatile.
In his production styles, in his I'm very curious to ask him some questions. Shall we
Yeah, let's bring him on.
Bring him in. Is he listening?
Let's see, Luke. You can.
There he is. He's coming in.
Turn your.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yo. Welcome. Cheers.
Thanks for that introduction. The checks are in the post. Yeah.
Luke,
thanks for having me along.
Luke, when was Booster on Peace Rock? I'm diving right in. I want to know everything, dude.
You're there. You're there, Chris. I'm going for 94 on that.
Should be. I literally have like the vivid memory in my head when I had this record in my hand and I was playing in a small club in Gießen, and I put it on, and it's just I still remember that moment like it was the first time I played it on a loud stereo sound system. It was insane. Having you on the show now is just incredible. I mean, all these tracks in between, Surface Noise being one of the most mind-bending tracks out there, I think, as well. On a noise level, I would say.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, it's really flattering, when people say that kind of thing, and honestly, it really is. Yeah. What I always find amusing for me is like Booster was actually written in a spare bedroom at my mum's house that I was temporarily just holding up in. And I quickly had to set up the gear, really small batch of gear, and I just knocked out that track. And I kind of love that, that when things happen just out of, just whatever, it just comes about.
Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah. So, thank you very much, Chris.
Do you remember?
I probably busted the bubble of
out of the moment, but everybody should listen. Everybody should listen, because it's really I try to stress that point as well all the time. It's like not necessarily if you have a big studio, if you have all the machines, Like literally today, you just need a pair of headphones and a cheap laptop, and you can achieve.
And an idea.
And Luke, do you know what was the setup then when you were making Booster? What was?
Booster was a set of Yamaha NS10s. I think it was an S950, a DX7, a couple of Aliases effects. I think a little desk I had.
Yeah.
It was really. It was.
I love those Yamaha DX.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy because that track, it's Ricardo Villalobos still plays it. I always play it. It's such a like panorama bar sort of anthem, but it's become, I guess, rather than maybe a track people would play downstairs in Bergheim, but it's one of those tracks. I think it's become one of those sort of Ricardo put a stamp on it, and it's always plays it. It's even if it's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I never thought of playing it in the panorama bar. That's slow it down a bit or something.
How far in your producing career were you when you did that in your bedroom?
Well,
how many releases already did you have in your done by that time?
That was quite far in. So there'd already been a lot of Planetary Assault Systems and Seventh Plane, and it was relentless. Any day that I was anywhere, I was trying to do something. But things around that time were very. It was a humble start. It wasn't. It was scraping together gear and just trying to put stuff together that just to make records. And it was, things were written in totally different. At one point I had the studio set up in a friend of a friend's council house, and he let me use his bedroom. He lived on his own, and he had a dog, an Alsatian, which I always thought was a bit sad because the dog had bad hips, and he insisted on taking it for a walk, and he would kind of drag this dog along the pavement, and I always wanted to rescue it, but I didn't think I had the right. But anyway, he put me in this bedroom, and he used to get around the electricity problem. He'd worked out a system to get around paying for the electric. So when I went in the house, I had to kind of pull this switch that activated the kind of subgrid to get the electricity up to where I had the studio stuff, like ka-ching, and then I go up there and and just spend time writing. And it was also it was great. It was kind of it was very authentic. There was no sort of bells and whistles on anything. It was
in true pirate form.
Yeah, but I didn't want it to be like that, but that was what was accessible, and
of course,
where things were at.
Luke, what came first for you? Was it DJing or production?
Well, the thing was, I've always been, I had piano lessons. I learned the piano to a degree. I taught myself the drums, and I was always knocking around music from a young age. And then when eventually I did start DJing in a proper club, which was in about '89, I just remember thinking to myself, this is a great way to perform and play music. It's not live, it's not in a band, but this is good. This is good. I'm putting something across here, and I thought I like this. And the mixing I kind of could do anyway. So when I ended up in that situation of playing records, it was great. It was I thought, well, I can do this. I want to do this in front of people. Here's an opportunity. This is what I'm going to do. And it was great. I think it's amazing how in life you kind of there's a lot of luck in things at the time. You know, you kind of find yourself in different things and different situations, and I think in '89 I was just there at the right time, in the right club, with the right mix. Just I just stepped in there.
And is this all in London around that time?
Yeah, this was there's a big club in London called Heaven, which is traditionally a gay club, but it's mixed, you know, whatever you like. There's a small club used to be attached to it called Soundshaft, and there was a night in there called Troll, and you know, basically it was a Ray Dayglow, you know, a mix of every type of person you can think of, you know, gay, straight, black, white, just a complete, it was almost like what I've been looking for. It was like, oh, right, here's everyone together, no matter what you are, coming together.
The melting pot.
I said, oh, this is what I've been looking for, you know, this is it.
So there were two.
Yeah,
there were 2 rooms at Heaven.
Yeah.
I know Paul Oakenfold was doing his Spectrum parties there, and Fabio and Groove Rider were doing Rage.
That's right. It was at the same time.
Same room that you were doing.
No, that was in Rage, and Spectrum was in the main part of Heaven. But if over on the side, you could walk through a small passageway.
Yeah.
And that went into the sound shaft, which was, you know, I think it was like 300 people.
Yeah.
How would you define the type of music you were playing?
I already had a lot of records, like a lot of stuff on Trax Records and Early Acid Records, some Transmat. There was a lot of things like 10 City and kind of the you know, the more soul influenced house, stuff like that, and that was really what was being played while I was playing. So it was kind of a mix of original acid house mixed with Chicago, mixed with Detroit, and even quite sort of commercial garage tracks at the time.
So Luke, were you going to clubs like Whirligig and all that kind of stuff in the beginning of the 90s, the more sort of hippie kind of ambient, weird sort of side of club culture in London?
I knew about these places, but I never got involved.
Yeah, same with me. I never went to Whirligig, but I heard, you know, this was one of these iconic sort of ambient clubs where everyone would sit under parachute sheets and all that kind of vibe. But
Heaven was largely responsible for the whole ambient kind of movement, because they had guys like Youth and Jimmy Coddy from KLF.
Yeah,
it was a big, especially in a place like Brixton. That was a big scene. But I just wondered whether you were involved or went to these clubs.
No, I didn't. I had a lot of people who used to come, you know, view, you know, Whirligig and places like that. And I was always curious, but I just seemed to find myself on a different path. It wasn't really where I was at.
Did you go to any like the free parties though, the more illegal parties, Luke?
I did a few of the M25 specials across the field on the back of a tractor. You know.
Wow.
But I found it that some of them were okay, but there always seemed to be a bit of a fight going on the stage. Who was going to be DJing? Nothing was kind of in order, so everyone just kind of cracked on with it, and so some of them were okay, but I think that was certainly before any of the kind of laws came in.
Yeah.
About, you know, you're not allowed a gathering or repetitive beats. But after that law came in, I wasn't really interested in going down the free party route, to be honest.
Matt and Luke, like being just such legendary veterans in the scene, when have you run into each other first time, since you're from the same country, essentially?
I can't remember.
Close
I
by.
mean, I'm not sure when we've actually met, Luke. So
Matt, did you ever go to heaven?
I used to go to heaven. Like basically, we started. My schooling was always Milk Bar in London with David Durrell, who we had on the show. But then it was Rage on a Thursday night. So, and that was at Heaven, and we went there every week. I think this was of course it was a school night, Thursday night, or
Yeah.
But it was the biggest party in London for years, and it was the birthplace of jungle hardcore. It was the first time I heard Moby play live. Groove Rider was always in the main room downstairs. Upstairs was Colin Dale, and of course later on the Sound Shaft was Andrew Weatherall and Drum Club. That was when things became a lot harder, like DJs. It was this whole Belgian thing. It was very, very hard down there. But
and how did you do in school?
not so well, actually.
Yeah.
How old were you then, Matt?
I was like, I guess when early 90s, so I was like, I was 20.
Oh.
Yeah. Same?
Is this early 90s or
More or less?
Yeah.
What era are we talking about? Late 80s, early 90s?
Early 90s. I mean, I think Rage started in 91, something like that. So, and yeah, for me, that was the place where you would hear acts like Moby, or you would hear it was the birthplace. I think Goldie often talks about it of hardcore and drum and bass, so.
I mean, the thing I always found, and I still found sort of enlightening about Heaven and that scene back then was a lot, there was straight nights, gay nights, there was this whole mix going on, and the music that was being played in all these nights was just, I could walk from Troll on a Saturday back into Heaven, and it'd be all this, every night there was this different music. It was an explosion of new.
But do you not think, Luke, that one of the things, I mean, especially if you look at the heritage of club culture, and I mean, especially going to the 80s, I mean, everything was so much more of a melting pot, even when Ministry of Sound first opened. And it's before, I guess, you had all these micro scenes, and the micro scenes is what split everything up, whereas you would maybe go to an underground club and hear house and techno, maybe even some pop tracks, Italo. It was always this melting pot. And then once everyone found their own scene, it kind of, everyone did their own thing,
Yeah. What do you think that's? Do you think that's like a natural kind of phenomenon of anything that, in the beginning you get something, it's quite chaotic and really interesting and new and sort of unexplored, and then slowly it's so good that everybody, gets involved, and then
it begins to segregate itself in a way.
Yeah.
And then you
I think
specialize.
It's like the Big Bang, like it's chaos in the beginning, and like a massive explosion, and then the galaxies form and the planets kind of
they find their own spot, and
they find their own. Yeah, everyone settles into their own kind of groove, and
like growing up in LA, going to the raves in like the mid to late 90s, that's like how I grew up, going to parties where there would be a rave with all the different types of music being played in one room, or maybe just a couple of different rooms, versus like now where it's just like it's a techno party, like that's all you go for, and people just go for that.
Yeah, there was never one particular genre, especially in Los Angeles when we were first going to parties. Every party played everything.
Yeah.
You had a drum and bass DJ, you had hardcore DJs, you had techno DJ, trance DJs. It just seemed like a huge mix up.
Yeah.
But I do remember doing a gig in, I think it was LA back in the 90s. It was the early 90s. It was
Oh,
one
yeah?
of the first times I ever went to LA. And I was playing after Two Live Crew.
Oh shit!
Wow.
Amazing. Wow.
So I got to see Two Live, you know, and they got the girls out there and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my
So-
god.
and I'm thinking, wow, how am I going to follow this? I'm not used to this, you know. I'm not used to following this kind of act. So, yeah, it was quite an eye opener, you know. But in America, it seemed like no one. It wasn't a strange thing. It was completely
No.
normal for that to happen.
No, it certainly wasn't. I think everything was new and everything was fresh and everybody loved everything. Just, you know, it was,
That's beautiful, man.
yeah. I mean, it seemed
I'm
like, you know,
rocking the 90s style today. It's the full-on 90s.
Yeah, UMM. We noticed the shirt, Chris. I've noticed from the minute you got on. UMM.
do you remember what year it was, Luke, when you
It was
came
a
out to
great
LA?
label. It was a great label.
Yeah, it was great.
Amazing label, yeah.
So, Luke, did you grow up? You grew up in London, or you grew up in Brighton, or in the southeast?
No,
Sussex.
I grew up in Sussex.
Right.
Then about when I was 16, I kind of I left school at 15 and kind of just went to London and just kind of I don't know really. It's probably not a good these days. It's probably not a good sort of guide to what to do with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because things like university and everything are probably a lot more important, probably a lot cooler now than they were then. But for me, it was about getting away from. I really had to find something that I liked, so I kind of ended up staying in London a lot, around people's houses, and you know, kind of trying to. I worked in a record shop first, so that was the first step I made to be around music, was getting a job in a record shop. And it's great.
You knew instinctively, I guess, from an early age that you wanted to pursue a career in music. Like the school thing wasn't an option, and like the straight life wasn't an option. You were going to go no matter what, in a musical direction. And
I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't know how it was going to, you know, what I was going to do in music. But I knew that I had to find something in there. It was too powerful. You know, it's I guess a calling. You know, it's a bit of a calling. So you got. I think it's good to listen to these things when you know your gut on things in life. It can be a hard road, but I think if anyone chooses to listen to that, it can be you know, sacrificing, but you know, you've got to be true to yourself.
I'm sure you were getting people, maybe family, that were trying to steer you in a different direction. At what point did you realize, you know, I can make a living at this? Like this could be a viable career path for me. You know, was it the record store when you were working at the record shop, or was it when you had your first record out, or remix? Or you were DJing regularly and you were making money, you were able to support yourself, you know?
I think it was when I got the residency at Troll, at Soundshaft. I got paid £50 a week for the Saturday night.
Wow.
And I thought this is good enough for me.
Yeah.
And actually at that time, just before I got that residency, I was cleaning planes at Gatwick Airport.
Wow.
Which I always thought was quite ironic, because then I spent most of my life sitting on
Be on airplane.
you know, I kind of felt I had a right because I used to clean them as well. So
Oh, wait, when you started touring a lot and traveling on airplanes, is that something that you would notice immediately when you got on a plane, like how the cleanliness kind of levels?
yeah, whether they've done that, you know, have they crossed the belts? You know, you know, they've left crumbs on the seat, man. That's not good.
No.
You know, it's but yeah, as soon as I got that gig at Heaven, that I just packed it in, and I just lived on whatever I could get, and that gig was everything. That was exactly what I wanted to be.
Wow.
Wow.
And you played every
That
Saturday.
life. I didn't even no plan.
You played every Saturday there, and were there any guests, or did you play the whole night, or how did it go?
No, I didn't do the whole night. There was a really my kind of mentor, if you like, was a DJ called Steve Bell, and he was already the main DJ at Troll, and he was this great guy. Yeah, really flamboyant. Had a big moustache, and I used to, even before getting that gig, I used to stand there and just listen to what he did and the way he played records, and how he kind of got into it. And to be honest, he was kind of like my mentor. I used to sort of take a lot of notes from that, how that went, you know. So I used to. So I think half the time I was kind of warming up the night for Steve, and then when Steve wasn't there, I used to do his slot. Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah.
Mo, you know that DJ Steve Bell?
No, just
You were
enthralled
not
by the
there,
story.
so I thought you know it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, he passed away now, but you know, I always think he's kind of like one of the unsung heroes of, you know, the early scene, at least of what I was involved in. He was a really good DJ, and he was always telling me that he made these amazing ambient mixes, and used to give me some of his ambient mixes on tape, and he was totally dedicated, you know. And then in the week, I would go around the record shops in London, Groove Records and Black Market, and yeah, you know, and do that.
Hey,
Were
Luke.
you, when you were working at Jelly Jam, right? Jelly
Yeah.
Jam. Were you already DJing, or just doing the shop thing?
Well, it was a staggered path. When I went to Brighton, I wanted to. I was already before that working in an import shop in Croydon, which was in South London, and that closed down. And I didn't like the fact that I couldn't be in that environment anymore. So I went down to Brighton, and I walked past this clothes shop, and I went in and I said, "Can I open a record shop above your clothes shop?" And the guy he goes, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Well, how much do you want?" And he goes, "I want this much." I said, "Okay, cool." So I went and bought all the old record display things from the shop that are closed.
Yeah.
Took them down to Brighton, and then I had someone who helped with the backing of buying stock, and that was the start of Jelly Jam.
Oh, so that was your shop, and it was also a label as well.
It was a label, but the label came through a distributor in London who used to have a label called Cold Sweat, which was a hip hop label, and he was interested in techno vibe. So that kind of happened somehow in that way through the distributors. And he put me and Alan Sage, who was my early collaborator, into a studio in Hammersmith.
Yeah.
And that's those, you know, the records on Jelly Jam, they came from being in the studio for the first time ever, and trying to get the engineer to kind of distort things and push the desk. You know, and at the time I was very kind of a lot more rebellious than I probably am now, and there was this kind of feeling of like, look, we're coming in here, and we want to make this music, and I know you are used to the, you know, maybe soul or something civilized, but we're coming in here now, and it's going to get messy. I mean, you know, that kind of like that sort of ignorant angst of passion. And so we went in there and we kind of like put these tracks together, and that it was a serious venture, but I didn't want to sort of take things too seriously. So you know, a lot of the strange names like well, actually, I think it was a record called The Pounder that I suddenly realised that Germany really liked it.
It would be
The name like The Pounder.
my
Title's
question,
super fitting.
my question would be like, why did you gravitate towards techno, and what gave you the thought that you want to distort stuff? We apparently like distorted stuff.
Well, it wasn't so much about distortion. It was. I mean, first of all, techno. For me, it was all about Derek May, because when I heard the strings that were in his creations, they had so much melancholy and so much thoughtfulness. It was the first time I realized you could have something like that in a record, in a dance record with rhythm, and it was okay, and it still worked as this kind of, it had rhythm, but it had this kind of deepness.
So it was the emotional content
Yeah.
within the techno kind of backdrop that
Yeah.
appealed to you.
Yeah, and to me, it was like a kind of it was an okay sign. It was like, that's okay. It can be this passionate, you know, and it's fine. So the whole, I think when it comes to techno, that was, you know, a track like, well, you know, to be honest, like Is What It Is. Not even, actually, strangely, not even Strings of Life, but I think the way the track like Is What It Is was put together, it's, you know, I have to admit, I still play it now, you know, in the Panorama Bar or something like that. But there was just so much emotion in it. It's, to me, it's a kind of a, it's a benchmark of what can be done with rhythm and emotion. So, you know, for me, that was a very big thing, that influence there, you know.
And
yeah.
you said you worked at a distributor, and then later you opened Jelly Jam, and so back then it was all about having the physical record. If you didn't have it, and you know, there was white labels everywhere, there was only a certain number of white labels that were pressed. So how was that for your, you know, how did that inform your confidence as a DJ? Because you were on the front lines, you were receiving all of this incredible music, new white labels, daily, weekly, whenever they were coming in, and then, you know, when were you playing out, and how confident, you know, owning a record store and having access to all that music, how confident did that make you feel as a DJ?
Well, I think what really happened was, after I opened the shop in Brighton, there was stuff going on the South Coast, and there was stuff going on in London, but I didn't really play out as much. I started looking at how I could write music. So even though I was doing gigs, I didn't really feel what I was finding was right, because the whole thing at Heaven had finished. The night closed anyway. And I kind of found myself in not finding the right place to play. So I used to do the odd gigs here and there, but all in the UK. But I think I was still looking for what was happened at Heaven. I kind of was still looking for that outside of there, and it didn't really exist. So I kind of, all that time was more of a focus on writing. How was I going to get to put myself in a position to write, to be able to produce music on my own, because I didn't have any equipment. So the shop in the end became a kind of a vehicle to being able to do that. And I was surrounded by these amazing records, really early, you know, around that time, I guess, really early Jack's upbeat stuff. a lot of early R&S stuff. There was good Italian stuff around at the time. Just all this, you know. And yeah, you're right. You know, if you work in a record shop, you know, you've got access to like those 3 promos.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be, you know, there's like 5 in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I ask.
Guy
I remember
the record shop was kind of the master, you know.
Yeah. And were
Yeah.
there, did you notice, were there fights in the record shop for the 3 copies that would come in of something everybody was after?
It was crazy, man. I mean, honestly, it was like a rave. You know, on a Saturday in a good shop, you know, there'd be the guys behind the counter. It would be to the back wall with people, and you'd put on a record, you know, and the hands would go up. You know? And then you kind of survey it and go, okay, well, I this guy's in here all the time. I know that, you know, there was this kind of pecking order.
Yeah.
And it sounds really kind of, you know, elitist, but it wasn't. It was really just like it was like a small club.
Yeah.
Really. You know, the shops.
Luke, I can remember in the early 90s, like City Sounds or like all of the shops in Soho, it was the same. It would be like three deep of people, especially with all these city boys, and like, you know, like on a Friday lunchtime, people would be like, you know, hand up, I want this record, that the DJ or whoever was playing the record in the store, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. The record would go on. Yeah. And then, you know, it'd be like DJ International or something. And then it was gone. It was on for 10 seconds, you know, and then, you know, it was like Black Friday or something. It was great. You know, it was very communal. And I guess, you know, even though that's gone now, I think that was kind of the social coming together.
Absolutely.
You know, good times.
I miss that tremendously. Just that whole the social aspect of being in a record store and being able to like communicate with the record shop buyers and even socialize with other DJs and just picking out a stack of records and listening to them all day. I mean, fuck. I feel bad for this generation who've not been able to live that.
They can't go. Yeah, they can't experience that. Kind of sad.
But you know, everything has to move on, doesn't it? And it's like,
we had Delirium here in Frankfurt. I'm not sure if any one of you ever visited that store. And Thursday mornings there was always the deliveries, like Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was just mayhem on Thursday to get your records. But every time I went to England, and I sort of, because I was working at IQ Records, and they had an office in London, and because I was able to speak a bit of English, IQ Records Frankfurt always sent me over to London for a couple of weeks, and I've just loved the vibe in all those just London record stores. You know, there was a certain way of displaying the records. You know, you had like pen. It was beautiful.
I mean, I always remember that, and I'm sure Luke was saying probably the same thing. Like, you'd had certain record stores in London, in Soho, for certain things. You go to Chucky Tunes for like the harder European stuff. Yeah. You go to Cloth Records for maybe the more soulful, house stuff. There was always there was so many shops that had their own little niche, but this niche, of course, was huge. You know, and then in the mid-90s, you had Fat Cat, etc., and they all kind of, even they specialized in their own little sound. And you have to remember, like, especially like for kids now, like you'd have records like DJ Harvey's The Black Cock series. They would sit in the shelves. No one was interested in this stuff, you know. There was a lot of stuff that was just, or the same with like Dance Mania or even Relief Records. It was very niche at the time, you know. So
we had a similar thing here in Los Angeles. Like, we had Wax Records, who was run by Doc Martin, who would curate mostly all the house music, and then you had Beat Non Stop, which was like all the kind of like more urban drum and bass, hip hop, and kind of beat music in general, and Dr. Free Clouds, which was more like the hardcore and the gabber and the rave sound that was like really big there. But I remember even back then, I've always projected this image to myself that all the best records were overseas. and that if I wanted to get the gems, like I needed to go to London, I needed to go to Germany, I needed to go to places like that to buy stuff. And I remember when my sister, it was probably around 96, my sister took her first vacation to London by herself. She was in university at the time, and I told her, just bring me back records. You know, she's like, well, what do you want? I was just find me some stuff and bring me back. Unfortunately, she brought me back just a collection of probably the worst, most cheesiest trance music I had ever heard in my life. But I think she just went to some random record shop and was just like, my brother wants some records, can you pick out some stuff? And whoever picked it out, yeah, we were not in line.
The thing is, Mo, this is, I mean, it's exactly the same for us. It's the grass is always greener. For us, it's always the American imports, you know, the New Jersey records. I did an interview. I just did an interview with Robert Hood, and I asked him, I said, do you know about the, you know, Summer of Love 1989? And he was like, he said they were obsessed with the whole Sunrise rave thing, because he said they suddenly saw all these Chicago DJs being booked to play at these parties. The music was blowing up in UK, and they wanted to be part of this scene. And I was like, wow, because I mean, you know, that's crazy. You know, that for us, it was always the other way around. We were always like looking to New York, looking to Detroit, looking to Chicago. But these guys were absolutely observing, and I think it obviously affected the style of music that these guys made as well. So.
But wasn't London historically always kind of the hub of European music distribution somehow? Because we were looking to London, like what is the imports coming from London? Because obviously there were the imports coming from the West Coast in the States, and those coming from London, because that covered most of like everything that happened in Europe somehow.
I think London's always had that sort of the music, the heritage thing historically, but you know, I saw that if you had Luke Unabomber from Manchester, they would say no, it's from the north of England, or blah blah. We had Hacienda, or blah blah blah, and it's just because it's London. That's it. It's no rhyme. You know, it's no reason that it's right or wrong. It's that, yeah.
Was London like pretty separated back in the day, like where you were from and which area of London you were from?
For sure.
Yeah.
The West End girls and the East End boys.
I think it's still the same now, really.
Yeah.
How cliquey was the scene back then? Like, were you hanging with Fabio Grooverider, people like Colin Dale, Colin Favor, Trevor Fung, like? Who was hanging out with who? Who was, you know, I'm sure there were crews.
I mean, like, for me, I mean, I worked with Colin Dale in the import shop in Croydon. So me and Colin, you know, I know Colin really well. He's a good friend and a really good guy, and great taste in music. So people like Colin, I kind of knew through that, but I'd often be doing gigs, and you know, Fabio and Grooverider would be on the same bill as techno DJs. So, and I know those guys have got kind of a background in house and techno as well. So there was, I guess it's not that different to maybe the way it is these days, but I think you would come across, I came across people from different forms of music more than I do now. You know, if I'm doing before March, if I was doing a festival, you know, I might see Chris there, or I might see any of you guys at the gig, but I'm not going to see Fabio and Grooverider or a drum and bass DJ, you know. So it was really varied, and I remember meeting loads of different, you know, just tons of people from different genres, really, just at the same gig, booked for the same gig. I think it was that time when there was sort of the house and techno and breakbeat were kind of forming. They were kind of together a bit more. It hadn't yet turned into jungle. It was still kind of blended together somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hey Luke, where did the name Planetary Assault Systems come from?
Which is, and that was actually the project name that you used first, right? Because I mean, having the name Luke Slater as a birth name, which other people would choose as an artist name, Luke Slater sounds like a rock star. Luke Slater sounds like this artist name. Yeah, how did you come up with Planetary Assault Systems?
Why don't we talk about aliases? Because I was curious at how many aliases you've had over the years.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
And when did you make the decision then?
Yeah, I'll just rattle some of them off. 4 slots for Bill, Clementine, Deputy Dog, Ernest Honest, Crispy Crouton, LB Dub Corp, which I didn't know it was you, and
what?
A lot of I had no idea. Yeah, but I have a lot of LB Dub Corp that I love. Offset, Lloyd owes me a packet. The 7th place. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And of course, we have Planetary Assault Systems, which we all are very much into. So what was first?
Well, Planetary was the big one, wasn't it? So, I mean, you know, the first ones were like Lloyd owes me a packet and 4 slots for Bill. You know, these crazy names. But to answer David's question, Planetary, I got a son who's 32 now.
Oh, wow.
And he had these, when at the time I started writing Planetary, he had some toys, which were basically animals in spaceships fighting the bad guys. You know, he had a fox. I'm sure someone knows what they were called. Fox, different animal.
Star
head.
Fox.
Yeah,
No.
something. I think. Hey. I think that, and I was reading the back of a packet, and I was kind of getting into the story, and it mentioned somewhere Planetary Assault Systems, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to kind of base everything around this idea that you're kind of traveling on this sort of mission, you know?
Yeah.
And it was there, and I thought, well, that's great. That will do fine.
What mission to assault planets?
To assault techno.
I think it was
That's
an
a perfect
assault
name.
on sound. It was a really otherworldly sound. I mean, you listen to a lot of the Planetary Assault Systems material, and it just sounds like music that is made by aliens on other planets.
I always
You know?
I always thought the name had to do with Star Wars for some reason. I don't know why. I thought maybe he's a Star Wars fan. It sounds like something from Star Wars.
Yeah. The first one was good.
You're an Empire fan.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I think I've just been always into this idea of when you make a record, you can come up with this kind of whole thing to imagine around, and you know, and that to me that made sense.
Well, it's interesting because the name actually kind of projects an image that the music fits perfectly to.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's super cohesive and it works together, and it's almost nearly too perfect.
That's exactly what I thought when I had the booster record in my hands. You know,
It's like it's almost too perfect where it's kind of annoying. You're just like, damn, how come I didn't think of that shit first?
Well, yeah, I don't know, but it's a very casual thing, you know. It's just,
it just happens naturally.
But back then, were all the aliases tied to a certain sound, or were you just kind of like, I just want to have this name for this record?
No, that was the idea, because suddenly I found myself in a position where Planetary was doing really well, and I'd done stuff on Jack's Upbeats under Clementine, and then I had lots of labels getting in touch, wanting me to write music, and I wasn't really sure what to do, because basically it was a very sudden situation. It wasn't I wasn't manufactured into that situation. I just found myself in that position, and I couldn't stop writing anyway. So I from then on, I kind of had to come up with aliases to be able to release records, and that's for better or worse. That's why there's so many pseudonyms. But I think it's quite good fun doing it.
Were any of those aliases exclusive to certain labels? Is that why?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the main hub for Planetary Soul Systems was Peace Frog. Then can you tell us a little bit about Peace Frog, about that label? How did that come together? It was quite an influential big label for us here in Germany in the late 90s. Really big.
Yeah. That was it was a very personal thing with Peace Frog. The guy that ran it, Pete, he was very dedicated to the music at that time, and that's really great to hear how it's perceived. For you, Chris. But I remember a lot of the time doing the demos for Planetary, and Pete would drive down in his car. I would get in his car with a tape, and I put in the tape, and then we would drive around. And I said, "What do you think of this one? What do you think of this one?" And he'd go, "Yeah, I like this one, but this one's better." And then we get the EP together in the car and drive back home. He dropped me off.
Yeah, and you had the EP.
It was all really on the go. It was it was quite unformed. Everything was very chaotic. It was a very, very chaotic time, but a good time.
Wow, you know how mind-blowing that is to hear that story now after like 25 years. Like, that we went into record stores and we held Peace Frog records in our hands, and we're like, wow, that's a new one. That's a new. And now you're telling, like, this is the first time I hear that story. It's just
yeah. Well, it's funny when you find out the real story behind things. Sometimes it kind of breaks the illusion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It adds to it now.
But it's surprising how things happen. I think I've always been quite humbled by. I'm very dedicated to what I do and the music, and quite serious about what I do. But in the same time, I'm quite humbled by what I've done and what I'm involved in, and and the people I know as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, is like, if you look back at your legacy so far, it's like, besides obviously the passion that you have for what you do, what is the secret? Like, what is the secret for such a long-term success that you're having? What do you think?
Oh,
I think you just mentioned it. Like, there's a lot of dedication to being humble about it.
What's your drive?
Stubborn, bloody mindedness. Just never stopping. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's. I don't like the idea of stopping. I think.
No.
Well,
why would you if you're enjoying it? If you enjoy what you do, and then.
Yeah, I mean, surely that's quite a common thing for musicians, or anyway. I think that basically you kind of want to drop dead on stage, really.
I wanted to ask you, Luke, about the Nova Mute album, and I can remember looking back when I think it was like, whether it was Music Magazine in the UK, but I think you were the first kind of like techno guy to be like on a cover, like in this suit. I don't remember another artist at that time being, it was always being on the cover, like you were like there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, were you into this idea, or was it something you pushed, or was it a label, or how did that come about?
Well, certainly with Freak Funk, it was very much. I was really conscious of how everyone was saying that techno had to be underground.
Right.
And it had to be this really secret thing, and it kind of got to me, and I thought, well, no, maybe it doesn't have to be that. Maybe there's a way to do it that it can be accessible to more people, but without changing the music. and that's kind of, it was part of the label because they wanted me to do that. But it was the right time to do it. I think it was trying to make more of, I wanted to reach more people.
And was that the first time that you used your real name as a producer?
Yeah.
And what triggered that?
Because Planetary was still signed to Peace Rock.
Exclusivity again.
Yeah, but there's a.
Well, he could have come up with another alias. He did it before, right?
Yeah, but I felt this was a good one.
This is it. Oh.
Yeah, I thought, let's do it.
Yeah.
What year was that? The Nova Mute album?
Late 90s, right?
96, I think.
97. 97.
Didn't I say? Thanks.
Love was one there. It was one of my favorites, and you did a Planetary Salt System mix of your own track.
I wanted to ask Luke as well, because basically at that point, I was resident at Open All Hours in Ministry of Sound. And techno at that point wasn't very. It wasn't popular in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You had Lost, you had a few things, but I can remember playing with Carl Craig at Open All Hours, and there being like 30 people. You know, it was not the most popular music in the late 90s. It was great that Nova Mute was, were promoting this kind of sound. And you also had like Dave Angel, who was signed to Ireland. There was still people, there were still labels that were sort of pushing this music. But I think especially in the UK at that time, it was very difficult, because it all becomes so very commercial and not, I don't know. It was a strange, for me. It was a strange time in the UK. I don't know how it was for you touring or for playing. Whether you were playing much in the UK.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing, Matt, because you're absolutely spot on about that era. It was a strange time, but I think I spent most of that time outside of the UK.
Right.
I was just in Germany and Holland and all over the world, really. And what were you playing in Open All Hours around that time?
I was in the bar. I was playing mostly in the bar area. Jim Masters was the promoter, and I was usually warming up in the bar, playing like trip hop, and sort of all that kind of vibe, or just slow house. It was a weird time. I mean, that was. I love Ministry of Sound, but that period, hearing Carl Craig and hearing him playing like his mix of Dave Angel, the club was empty, and it was a very weird.
It's so interesting that you're saying that, because like around 90, I would say around 95, 96, 97, 98, I actually came over to England quite a bit to play like Orbit Leeds and the Complex in London, and for us it was always super exciting to go to England during these late 90s somehow.
I think it was just more the fact that Ministry of Sound it was more associated with like New Jersey, New York house sound of like CJ McIntosh and Tony Humphries. And then they started doing Open, which became this huge thing. But the label, I think, we need to get Jim Masters on the show, but the label was much bigger than the actual the club. But of course, I can remember being there when Future 303 played. I'm sure you played there, Luke, but it was an amazing system, an amazing place to be in. But it was just the fact that I don't think techno, if I look back, techno wasn't trendy.
There was all these clubs like Atomic Jam in Birmingham and all these things.
But still, again, and this is the thing, it wasn't maybe a London thing. I used to play a lot of free parties in mid Wales in the 90s. Like it was definitely an outside of London was in the 90s or late 90s and it was Craig Richards or these fluffy bra sort of parties, this like a handbag house thing that it wasn't a cool place in the late 90s. I don't know, maybe Luke can talk about
No,
it. But
no. I mean, it's you know, Chris, you're saying you're playing at the Orbit. I remember the Orbit in Leeds.
yeah,
And yeah, but that was the thing. Even around that time, London was really kind of pretty much off the books for playing. It wasn't a techno city in any shape or form. And if you were in the UK, it was places like the Orbit in Leeds and more specialist places. You probably saw the best of it, you know. There was,
yeah,
and I really like early house music, so I knew this was going on. That, you know, in the ministry, there's a lot of house, and some of it I liked. But because I wasn't involved, you know, you just ended up spending nearly all those years outside of the UK, which I've always thought was kind of a shame, really, around that time. In a way, though, you know, things do go in cycles. They, you know, especially somewhere like London, I think it's always reinventing itself. So how long does anything really last in London? You know, things are in and out of fashion so quick.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Did you ever have any moments of like self-doubt, like you chose the wrong career path or the wrong genre? Did you ever feel like you had to make compromises along your path? Where you are today? Like, were there any moments of self-doubt along your journey to where you are today?
You know, self-doubt. That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't think I tend, you know, I've done stuff that's been successful and unsuccessful. I've done stuff that's failed, and stuff that's really been popular. But I never really, because I never really, you never really know the outcome of what you do. Which I kind of like. So I've always worked off the basis that you have to be true to what you want to do.
yeah,
And what comes from that is unknown. And you know, it's almost like a get out clause, really. It's saying, well, you know, I'll do this, and hopefully it's going to, you know, people are going to get it, or, you know, this kind of thing. And I think that's been really my way of looking at things.
I think since we're on this topic, you made a tweet the other day that just resonated with me deeply, because it's been a rather shit year for most of us. And it's funny how on social media, you see a lot of our colleagues, and there's just a ton of just negative, condescending things that come out of people's mouth, and it's usually just a self-reflection of personal misery. It's never really like a commentary on the whole scene itself. And if you just allow me to like quote you for a second, you said, in my career I've been up against it a few times psychologically and the effects of the business. So to any artists out there who are feeling it right now, don't let go of the music you love, and the music love you to write and play. Let that be light. And I genuinely, truly appreciated that. It just resonated me deeply when I read that, man.
Oh, well, I'm really glad. I think, you know, it has been a shit year, and you know, everyone's hurting. Everyone's lives have changed more. Well, 99% of people's lives have changed. And, you know, if you're an entertainer of any kind, it doesn't matter what you do, what you were used to has been taken away from you in one day, you know, just totally. And I think, but, you know, I kind of think that when this as horrible as it is, it's what was is what was, and what's going to come is quite unknown at the moment. But that still shouldn't, maybe that can be a killer of many things, but it's just nice to think you can go back to what's really in your soul and make something out of that, because at the end of the day, that's what you got, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you've always struck me as the kind of guy that hasn't really been too fond of nostalgia. Like, you're very forward thinking, and you're propelling your career and your sound always in this forward kind of motion. Do you dwell in nostalgia?
No.
Especially now when we're all we're not doing our thing, we're stuck at home and we're thinking about our legacy and our past and how we used to do things and how we're gonna, resume when things get going again.
I just think, well, that was a good 30 years.
Talking about nostalgia, I just found it. I just
Hey,
look at that.
in the plastic as well, man.
That
Yeah,
is still the original.
Yes.
I have that since it came out. It's incredible.
Really? Oh
Yes.
man!
Do it with the shrink wrap.
Wow.
Don't break it,
I
Chris.
just realized it's in the box behind me because my most valuable records are in the box behind me.
Oh, look at that! I don't even have that actually myself. It's sad, but there you go.
This is the part where Chris turns around and trips over something and drops it, and it just breaks.
Look, I can give it to you. It's yours.
Now I'm not going to take your booster.
Hey, Luke, do you still have a record collection at all, or did you ever keep records? Yeah.
Yeah. I still.
Look.
Hi.
Say hi. Do you want to say hi to the guys?
No,
He's
shy. Of course.
That's one done.
Oh, okay. Not about you. It's about Luke. Luke, he's our guest. So you want to say
Hey.
hi? Say hi, Luke.
How you doing? West Bar?
There you go.
But yeah, I don't know if I got the answer, but yeah, do you still have a record collection at all of like old stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I lost about 5,000 records in a robbery about 20 years ago.
Holy shit.
But I've still got a lot of it, and I've had to rebuy a lot of really old American tracks.
I have a faint memory of that story. That was going around, right? What happened back with that robbery? I kind of think I have a memory of that story.
Yeah, I was in London. I was moving, and a friend of mine had somewhere I could store the records, and they were there for one night, and the next day, the place had been robbed, and half the records had gone.
Oof.
And but it was a bit sad.
How big of a blow was that for you? Like, what happened then? What triggered it? Like, what happened afterwards?
Well, there's no point in calling the police in London, so we found out that this guy had actually taken the records to a shop in Greenwich, and he'd left in all the promo things that had my name on it. Right? So he goes into the shop, and the shop asks him, he says, like, do you want to buy all these records?
Wow.
And they go, okay, well, we need some ID. So the guy gives them his ID. Now, if you're going to rob somewhere, don't give your passport to the people you're telling it to. I mean, who was this guy? So I realized the record shop had all my records, and I just thought, you know what, you can have them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy shit.
I didn't want them back. I just thought.
So Luke, how are you? I mean, at present day this year, how are you organising your music? Are you like is it purely digital, or I mean, how do you do it? I mean, or do you still refer to records or? So sorry.
Hold on. In the meantime, Luke, you were. It seems like you were happy to let go. Like, that's probably one of the good things.
Was that a symbolic letting go of?
Yeah.
Like letting go of the stuff, of the old stuff. Like, just always make room for new things to happen. Was that kind of also?
Yeah, it was like, you know what? That, as sad as that is, I'm not going to chase it. I'm not going to.
Oh, no wonder you're so seasoned in just letting go of the past.
Well, you know, in a way, you got to, haven't you? You know, I mean, it's much. I think it's much more interesting trying to move forward than discovering things and you know, meeting people. You know, I've never met you before, so I think it's a healthy thing. You know, I kind of always like to be right at the start of things rather than at the end. You know, I think that's just a habit, and I think the situation we're in right now is kind of an opportunity to go back to the beginning almost of something, because there's no, you know, you haven't got to play every week. It's not, you know, it's not a relentless thing you're on. It's, you can think a bit differently now, and I think that's I've taken that as a positive way to try and think. It feels like I felt at the beginning, so it reminds me of the inventive times. And yeah, you know, there's no money coming in from gigs, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't do something, I think.
Of course.
Have you been able to be
Yes, you know.
creative during this period, like, or do you suffer? There's a lot of artists I talk to that are having trouble because of whatever they got going on personally, with the lack of income and other things that are the effects of this kind of shutdown. They're unable to, you know, think about being creative in the studio and tap into that creativity that was always there. Like, how are you finding that?
Well, I mean, the first 3 weeks were like a holiday, and it was nice to be off the road, and it was quite exciting for something different to happen like that. But then just like, I think like everyone, it's psychologically it's challenging. But the pluses are, I spent a lot more time with my daughter. I've done many things that I wouldn't have time to do normally. And I think just, I mean, I've been working on stuff, a couple of remixes and a new ambient project actually, which is, I haven't really felt that much like writing Planetary sort of systems. So for me, club music is very for a club, but it doesn't affect everyone that way. I mean, I know some of the records Matt's been putting out, you know, real corkers, man, and they're, you know, that's right there for the club as soon as you can play them again.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the thing is for me is that I think you have to think about you know, even, is it maybe the 1% of the time you listen to music is in clubs? So you have to think about all the other people, all the people that never go to clubs that still love club music. So I don't want to stop. This is the thing, Luke. I know a lot of labels have stopped during this pandemic, have stopped releasing music, but I feel that if we stop, then we're going to have a hard road getting back to where we were. So, you know, that's the reason, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's great.
You can still dance in your bedroom, in your pants,
Absolutely.
or whatever. You know,
you can dance in your pants anywhere if you're brave enough.
True, but you know, that's the thing. You know, I think we all, if you're into this music, part of it isn't about actually. Of course, there's the experience of being in a club or being in an environment, whether it's a festival, club, you know, 200 people, 1,000 people. But still, people love to listen to dance music in a car when they're going to work,
absolutely,
or anywhere, you know. So, and I always feel that we belittle, or our industry belittles those people who enjoy music outside of a club. You know, you know, and that's half of it. So, yeah, that's why we haven't stopped. So, thank you.
Maybe we didn't think of enough of that before.
Yeah.
I think if anything, if people still keeping club music, they keep making club music that, you know, people get really riled up and excited for when the parties do come back. They're like super ready to go, you know?
It's like an extended promo cycle, right?
Yeah, just like then.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to going through the promos, you know. When
At the end of the day, do and make what you like and what feels right.
yeah, I think everybody has their way, you know, of dealing with stuff. And
what are you listening to? What have you been listening to outside of obviously the promos and the club music? Like, what do you listen to? What do you gravitate towards outside of techno?
I like a lot of original dub music, Studio One type of dub, and the Upsetters and people like that. I'm read that sort of raw dub. But I'll happily go sort of to you know, some kind of 80s new wave stuff, even to, you know, I'm really all over the place, you know. Actually, what I really like doing is going on Bandcamp, and just sort of seeing where I end up.
Yeah,
There's sometimes I've really discovered, I can't repeat the names, but I've discovered some really interesting music doing that.
That's been a huge theme throughout this entire pandemic for me, is just Bandcamp and shopping there every single weekend, and also trying to just help support artists directly through that medium.
Yeah.
How influential has dub been in your productions or production process over the years? Like, were you always into it? Does it always find its way into what you? Does it inform your, you know, production approach?
Well, I think it's always there. I've always liked the sound of it, and the way it was made was very. I really like music that's very instant. It was made on the spur of the moment, and it captures something very quickly. You know, you can tell that in some records, and I think that's what I like about dub. But there's always that tendency, you know, if I'm working on something that's planetary, I like to keep the dub a bit more out of it. And there's, you know, sometimes if it drifts that way, then, you know, I go the other way because, you know, it doesn't work for me in that way. But I think, at least for me, it's a really important form of music, just in the form, the idea of dub, I just thought it's, you know, what was it, like an invention that happened? It was like an afterthought. Now let's get a vocal record, and let's let the engineer have a go at it. You know, and like kind of mix it up a bit and put some effects on. You know, well, what a great idea.
Yeah.
You mentioned new wave. You know, prepping for this interview last night, I decided to listen to your All Right on Top album, and I'd never heard it before.
I was wondering whether that would come up.
I'm just really curious where you were creatively, where your head was at, and you know, you were what it seemed like to all of us who were buying your records. You seemed such an uncompromising figure within techno, and it seemed like you really, you know, turned a lot of heads with that album. And first of all, is that you singing on all the songs, or was there a vocalist that you were?
No, it's a guy called Ricky Barrow.
Oh, okay.
To be with a band called The Aloof.
The Aloof.
Yeah,
I remember them.
Yeah.
And so, what was the creative spark for that project, and how was it received, and what did you learn in going through that whole process of maybe, you know, taking a shot of becoming like a techno pop star? And did you care what your hardcore fans thought of what you were doing, or you know, you had this vision that you wanted to see it through, and you didn't care really what people thought, and it was what it was at the time that it was, and then you moved on. So what was that whole experience like for you?
it was interesting. I mean, at the time, I felt like doing that.
Yeah.
But I felt like doing that, I think, for the right reasons. It wasn't a reason to try and I wanted to write some songs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the best way to do it.
Was that a reaction to all the years of instrumental music? It was, right?
Yeah. I'm probably my own worst enemy in that way, that when things get too comfortable or too accepted, then I tend to kind of go against myself. So I think I was just at a stage where I didn't want to write what I'd been writing again and again and again. And this seemed like a really fresh thing. But what I didn't realize how much people loved what I'd done before.
Right.
And that was the thing. I absolutely had no idea. It was, because when we toured All Right on Top, it was, I mean, some of the fans were seriously pissed at me. I mean, they were
Can you
seriously.
imagine if you had the kind of social media platforms that we have today and the way people vent? How do you think it would have been received if you had done something like that now today? Like,
hold on one second. Maybe we have to clarify for the audience that All Right on Top was an album on mute, which came out in 2002.
yeah.
Yes.
And it was full of songs produced by. So
Yeah.
people just follow us, it's just like maybe somewhere thinking, what are they talking about?
Yeah. I think the internet connection went bad there. I didn't. What did? Sorry, I missed.
Ali, repeat your question.
Chris was just putting into context for all the people watching, the album that you had made, which featured vocalists and it was songs. It was a song-oriented album, and you'd been associated with instrumental work for so many years, really seminal music. You were kind of a figurehead, an elder statesman within techno, even back then. And then continue. And how was that received, and where was your head at? And
well, I mean, if I did that now, I mean, I think these days, if you do anything that's slightly not what you're expected to do, then the social media feedback of that is intense.
Luke, I always remember with like someone like Josh Swink. Always, he said if he doesn't play High State of Consciousness, people get pissed off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're not. I think we all know, as being artists and maybe DJ producers, and not just DJs, that we're not a jukebox. Is that we need to progress, and we need to. You're not always going to paint the same picture every time you go and play, or you make another album. It's not going to be the same thing over and over again. And it's that thing, like you said about repeating yourself, that it's the hardest. It's the hardest thing to break, isn't it? The mold to become something else and not become stuck.
Yeah.
That gives you that freedom. To be.
Yeah, maybe I think that's a as time goes on and the more you do, I think that is quite a challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
But also I think as well, when I've thought about it, if I went to see like if the Clash was still playing and the Clash were doing a concert and they didn't do London Calling,
I
would be seriously pissed off about it.
Yeah. I think there was a Mick Jagger interview where he talked about that.
Yeah.
But I think when you're on that level.
But I mean, I remember seeing Prince. I went to see Prince in concert in Berlin, and he didn't play because he'd found God at this point, and it was so he didn't do any of the sexy stuff, and it was a real like a turn off, But for sure, with a lot of artists, I think if you're really into the artist, I mean, I'm a massive Peter Gabriel fan, or a lot of. If you're into very progressive artists, then you follow them. You know, you understand what they do. You don't want them to repeat themselves. But for most people, especially DJ culture, I think there's a lot of artists who we know, if they go out and play, if they don't play the hits, then people get fucked off. You know, they get pissed off.
Well, there has to be some sort of a significant difference between pop culture media and the electronic music industry in general. I mean, pop culture artists and musicians who put out the very familiar format of releasing an album with a single and then touring and then playing that single. It's a very kind of entertainment industry based thing. And dance music has never really followed that. I mean, when I go and see my favorite DJ play, I don't want to hear him play the same DJ set that I heard in a podcast already or in a DJ mix before. You're always constantly searching for something new, for music you haven't heard before, and so on, so on. I think sometimes people tend to oftenly just they get it mixed up. They kind of get confused in the terms of the difference between a forward-thinking perspective in electronic music and a kind of a pop culture artist world.
But you have to think, Mo, for sure. I mean, most of us, you know, the reason we become successful is ultimately because of one record, maybe.
Sure.
That's it. So when you go to do these gigs and you fly across the world, the audience want to hear these tracks, right? So
maybe not necessarily only one track, maybe a certain formula that you present your music with. But Luke, how did you, in hindsight, all right on top, what was that then for you? Were you disappointed by the reaction? Were you happy about what's going on? What was your takeaway? I mean, you realized that people love the music that you've done prior to this point, and you didn't.
I was happy that I did it. Because inevitably I would have done something like that.
Yeah,
it was just in my DNA to end up just to do something different like that. Yeah. But I was really sad that I felt quite bad about the people who really love what I do, and and they thought it was, to me it wasn't that far removed from what I'd done, but to other people it was so far. I'd really let them down.
So did they turn on you, and did you have some fans that understood what you were trying to do and gave you the benefit of the doubt?
It was 50-50, but I think this, because of the way the scene was before that album, it was around the world. It was people. I'd built up such a thing everywhere that people did not expect Luke Slater to come and play and do all right on top. That was just that was a million miles. They weren't on that journey that I was on, at all. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't see that, but it taught me a lot about what you do and I think the effect it has on people. So there's it's not just about you, it's not just what you want to do, and that's going to be good. There's a whole thing going on here, and people really love what you do. People love what all of you do, and to them it's a much bigger thing than maybe it can even be to yourself. It's a huge thing, and I think that's something to really find special.
I remember back then that when the album came out, that a lot of colleagues of ours, like, the notion was a little bit, oh, what is he trying to do? He wants to be a star now. Was that, did it get to you? Did stuff like that get to you?
What the push over into the world,
into more song-oriented, like, music, what is he trying to do now? What is he trying to do?
You have to purge some colleagues and friends in this industry as a result of that?
Well, the crazy thing was the press were, I think it's the most press interest I've had in something I do. there was so much press around that album, maybe based on the fact it was so different. I don't know. So the press, it was just endless press and interest, but it wasn't really a world. When I started treading in that world, I wasn't very comfortable at all, and yeah, you know, it's but still, I think, you know, I'm not anti-song, as it were. I think songs, there's some, you know, songs are great when they're great songs. So
You still feel like you want to continue something like that at some point?
I don't know, Chris. You know, it's you know, who knows? You know, it's not on the cards. You know, I'm not working on mine. So
Okay.
Are you
Unless
making
you can sing
Luke, are you making more dub stuff at the moment? Have you been making a lot of dub kind of? I mean, I love the LB dub sound of it. So, is there more of that to come in the following in 2021?
there's quite a few bits of LB Dub Corp stuff that just has never been released, Matt.
Okay.
You know, I tend to store up stuff quite a long time.
Do you release it mostly on Mode Evolver?
No, I just you know, it's just as and when really. There's no sort of plan for LB Dub Corp. It's just nice to kind of do it now again. It seems to be something I can get away with aside from what I do on the techno side. People seem more accepting letting me do that, and yeah, which is great. It's more relative, I think, to what I do. But I'm glad you like it. You know,
I love the name.
We love it
because it's so anti. I mean, the sound is so anti-corporation, but like there's corp.
LB Dub Corp.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was living at London Bridge, and
oh, is that what LB stands for?
Yeah, I live down the street called Bermondsey Street, and you know, it's one of those roads in London that have been gentrified, and it was so rich, and there was absolutely no inspiration there for me at all. It was just money, 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 corporate banks, and everything like that. And so I just thought, you know, I'm just going to lock myself in a room and, you know, make some dub influence stuff just to kind of get some kind of normality back in my head compared to everything that was going on in London. You know, it was a road that went from a slum in the 80s to one of the richest roads in South London.
Wow.
It's incredible, yeah. But yeah, hey, that's progress, right?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
We don't look back. You're in your studio right now, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that the place you spend next to spending time with your family most of the time during the pandemic now? And tell us a little bit how your production process looks like. I see you have a big desk right behind you too. It's one of probably your heart of things, right?
Yeah, I've always used a desk, and I think that's just an old school thing, really. And it's basically the same desk I've had since the 90s.
Wow.
It's an Audient desk, and you know, it's an updated model, but it's the same thing I've always had. And I work in more of an old school way, I think, than probably now. But it's just whatever works for you, isn't it? You know. And but I don't know. I find the split between family and writing is a two-way thing. I don't want to spend all the time in the studio, and I kind of go back and forth a lot, which is really annoying for Heidi. So I'm kind of there, then gone, and then I'm back, and I'm kind of I tend to do a lot of different things at the same time as writing. So I kind of pop into the writing and then pop out again. Mm-hmm. I don't really sit down and complete things all in one.
Yeah.
Is that?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, like, how do you think it's gonna be when you get back on the road? You know, after being home so long and being able to like hang with your family whenever you want, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, gigs start coming back. How do you think that's gonna feel for you?
Well, what was your last show, Luke, before everything shut down?
Um,
Where were you?
I got back from the States actually.
I was in New York when I saw you.
Yep, it was that one. I got back and I was a little bit ill in the end of February, and then I went and did a back-to-back with FaZe in Rotterdam, and then I got back from that and I was really ill. So I probably spread COVID everywhere in Holland, and that was it.
You got COVID, or you were just ill with something else? Like just
It could have been COVID, but
yeah, you never bothered to check.
no, I don't think you could even get a test at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and that was it. So that was the last gig. I saw David, got back from there, you know, and that was it. And probably the same as everyone, right? You know.
Absolutely.
So when you hit the road, how do you think you're gonna feel once you start getting back? Are you excited about it, or are you a little bit, I don't know?
I read that you're kind of getting. I read, David, that you're kind of getting into the groove of like taking it, you know, getting into the new way, right? Like, you know, the
Oh man, it's cutting off.
Yeah.
worried about getting used to the cycle that has been over the last few months, because it's quite comfortable.
I wake up at the same time. I go to sleep at the same time every day. I eat around the same time every day.
He's like a 90-year-old man.
I mean, for me personally, health wise, it's been amazing. Like,
yeah,
really.
but I mean, are you drinking more? I'm definitely. Well, I don't know if I'm drinking more, but I'm drinking regularly.
I feel like I'm drinking kind of the same as before.
Yeah.
Some days more than others, of course, but I mean, I don't know. I think the schedule for me it's been perfect, but you know, once you throw that wrench in there, once you get back on the road, I don't know how it's gonna feel like.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've anticipated being rather difficult going back on the road after spending so much time with my son being home this year, then being apart from him. You know, seems to be another adjustment to get used to again.
Or maybe it'll just be like, you know, once
you want to go back to, you know, do you want to go back to, you know, being away every weekend? And
that's a damn good question.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm
not sure I do.
I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. And that's my question to you, Luke, is like, do you want to, or are you ready for that?
I don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
You know, so
I think
I don't
a new
know.
balance, maybe. Like this is a reset, and there might be just a new approach, a new balance that we're all gonna achieve. And everyone's being very reflective during this time about how they used to do things and what they don't want to do, you know?
Yeah.
It definitely made me look back on how I used to do things, and I used to be like, damn, I really didn't, you know, take care of myself how I should. And now I have a better idea how to take care of myself. And so definitely helped me look back and
well, there's certainly a part of me that misses destroying myself on the road then.
yeah, every once in a while.
Fun.
Of course, every once in a while it's fine, but you know, just being on the road and not really caring about my health was it was bad.
But I feel you, Mo. I felt I feel that every weekend. Like the feeling comes on, and then it gets really, really strong. And sometimes I have a choice. I could do it, and then I choose the other road.
As long as you're not doing it all the time. So every once in a while, I think it's fine to, you know, to just let loose and not really Not really worried.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I've never really thoroughly enjoyed the like heavy touring every single weekend or playing multiple gigs in one night. I mean, I love playing shows. Don't get me wrong, but that's never been my favorite part of this. I've always been more of a studio person. I've always enjoyed the process of writing music,
Yeah.
and I do thoroughly enjoy performing. And the hustle and bustle is obviously required and necessary, but it's not something that I've thoroughly enjoyed over the years. So this pandemic has definitely allowed me to be in the studio and enjoy the process of writing music, and not necessarily dance music all the time, but just writing whatever the fuck I feel like when I wake up, and whatever feels like coming out just comes out.
Mo, then, like, with especially with all of us sitting around here, is that most of the people we know who've become very successful in this industry, they've all, once they start touring, they lose a lot of the knowledge that they had, because they're not in the studio, they're just touring. So
Yeah, they're just on the road.
You know, they're on the
Absolutely.
road, and then they start making music, and it's not as good as how it used to be. So I think that this is a great time for a lot of. I've learned so much in the last year from not being on the road. You know, that's the thing, and actually taking the time to, because this was the thing. I saw it in myself, especially like even 5 years or 10 years ago. The reason you became so successful is because, or you had this chance, or you had this freedom when you were younger to be imaginative and make this stuff. There wasn't the pressure of having an agent or a manager saying do this, do that. You know, you could just do what you want. And now we're in the same world, you know.
No.
Yeah.
And that magic of allowing poverty to influence music again.
Yeah, no, but no, exactly. That's the whole thing, though. I mean, I was working for American Express in Brighton and remixing Kylie Minogue. I was going to work, but my wife was like, "You need to put this so much money on the table every month." You know, it was. You've got to do this to, you know, you can't. It wasn't just a luxury of making music. Just, oh, you know, I'm a touring DJ, blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, so
yeah.
I mean, I did the 9 to 5 job, and then would be in the studio until 5 o'clock in the morning, and then come into work sleeping on my desk the next day, and then promoting and throwing parties on the weekend and never sleeping on the weekend. And I mean, you just did it because you loved it, you know?
Yeah. No,
Luke, how inspired are you by the techno that you're hearing today? That's been spearheaded by you know, certain DJs and artists. You know, the tempos obviously have been increasing. There's, you know, everyone's being, you know, kind of harking back to like the new wave, new beat, electronic body music kind of era. That's, you know, that's made a comeback. Like, do you still feel like as an artist, you're still inspired by what's happening in techno? Is it keeping you inspired?
Well,
you feel like you have more to say as a techno artist?
Well, I'm always interested in other people's music as well, and yeah, I am inspired by. I mean, techno is a very broad word, isn't it? And you know, stuff at 145 that's kind of reminiscent of early 90s. I think it's great, but it's not where I'm at. You know, it's kind of, I kind of been there, and t-shirt,
totally.
You know, and you know,
you've been through it.
You know, but it's not like it's healthy. I think it's healthy, but it's.
Do you think you have? I was talking to Robert Hood about this whole thing with Jeff Mills with the sci-fi thing, and you know, if it being very much of a sci-fi, you know, him being upset or being obsessed by that Blade Runner, blah blah blah, or techno has to be forward thinking, and Rob was like, no, it's a social thing. And what's your take on what you do and your imprint on techno? Is it a social, like, is it a dystopian thing, or is it like
Is it political?
no, but is it like it's just like you're not in, I don't see you being this fairy tale like sci-fi dude. I think it's a middle ground of like, it's maybe, I don't know.
Dystopian, no, it's never really been something I'm that interested in.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a sci-fi fan, but I don't think, I think I'm somewhere in the middle on that.
Yeah, because I was really sorry, I was wanting to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was surprised, but not. I don't know, with Rob especially, for him to say that he with Jeff Mills, it's definitely, he's obsessed with all this sci-fi blah blah blah, and that's techno, but for it to be like more of a social standpoint takes, it's a different point of view, and not, it's, I don't know, it's a different thing, and maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I just look at things a bit more with a purposeful head, in the idea that if I can write something that works on a dance floor, at least without Planetary, but I can get away with putting stuff in it that tries to take people to this other world, and if I can kind of tempt them along there, then that's what I'm looking for.
Which is sort of a social thing in the way.
I never see the idea of, look how what crazy it is, and you just don't get it, but it's really crazy and that's good, or it's really straight and that's really good because it's so easy to comprehend and it's really straight. So somewhere in the middle there, there's this, probably because of the influences over the years, it's a give and take idea that I want to be able to play it, but I don't want to. I don't want it to be too easy.
Yeah,
I want to try and,
I see that very similar. I think that's a very social thing. I think, you want to collectively take the people on a different level by.
I guess there is the social element is important, I think. But at the same time, if there's a really good track that's very straight, but it's a good track, it's a fantastic track, and it's the same when you get a really special track that's really out there.
Yeah.
As when you play it, you think, I wonder how this is going to.
This one.
It's also a little bit of marketing at the end of the day. And I don't mean that in like a negative bad word, but as an artist, I think you can oftenly paint the image of how you want people to perceive your music or project it, so to speak. I mean, like in terms of like Jeff Mills, it seems like he's encompassing everything that he's into artistically. Like he's into black and white early silent films and science fiction, and he's kind of bringing all of his interests in even space and interstellar travel and everything all into one, and his music kind of is a soundtrack to everything that encompasses his interests. I think individually, all of us as artists, have the option and opportunity to do so. If you're not the type who's into like outer space and wormholes and future travel, and maybe you just like to have a good time, and it's more of a social
that was my point. Isn't that the difference maybe between like the Chicago and Detroit thing, where the Chicago was the more, it's a pure party vibe versus
kind of
Detroit kind of like sci-fi thing, where it's I'm 100% into futurism and like love everything that this paints, but then you have to also accept and love the sheer jump up sort of value of like, work this, blah blah blah, You know what I'm going to say, but I don't want to get into trouble.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe it's just escapism,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's for me, it's always been about escapism and, you know, trying to get away in your head from, I don't know, maybe yourself, or it's a very psychological thing, I think, for me. And welcome to the, you know, welcome to the twisted world of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Luke, I remember many years ago I was on tour with Sven Veith in Australia, and we were talking about how there was a lot of techno at the time. I mean, still to this day, a lot of techno with a lot of breakdowns. And we were talking about your records specifically, the Planetary stuff, and how, you know, I play with Tractor. You look at the waveform, and sometimes there's zero breakdowns. You know, and how refreshing, and how amazingly refreshing that is. And Sven was just going on and on about how much he respected your work, and because you weren't subscribing to that formula that everybody was going for. And I think festival culture, you know, over the years, which has gotten to, you know, to this point where like it's influenced the way artists arrange their music, and you've kind of gone against, you know, all that.
I think there's enough records with break. Those kind of, you know, I don't need to add to that pool.
So I'm curious about when you're sitting down to, you know, to produce these tracks, you feel zero pressure to put breakdowns in anywhere.
Right? I'm very sensitive to them happening.
Yeah, just curious.
You know, it's I have a rail.
Yeah.
And whether it's an authentic breakdown, and, you know, or is it there just for the sake of a breakdown?
Yeah. No, because I know artists that they go into a session before they've even produced. I mean, their template is, I got to have 3 breakdowns, and I got to have 2 short ones and 1 really massive one, and that's the blueprint.
That's a blueprint, right?
That's the lens that they look at everything through. And they're playing.
When you get those records, do you you know, are you at a point where you sort of discard too many breakdowns? Yeah, has your breakdown limit kind of reduced because of that? You know, you think a breakdown was good, but now there's too many breakdowns. Now I want to kind of shrink it to a respectable breakdown. I
think you become sensitive to it happening a lot, and then it's like all you. And I look at the waveforms of, you know, I play with Tractor, so I see the waveforms, and I immediately, when I load it into a deck, and I'm like, oh God, 4 breakdowns.
I like that expression, respectable breakdowns. That's a good one. We'll need to work on those.
Gentleman's breakdown, I think, you know.
But that's the great thing about cue points, especially with like the Tractor and CDJs. You can just like kind of skip the breakdown if you want to, or cut it short. You know, you can truncate the breakdown.
But I think that's really inspiring. That's really inspiring for the younger producers who are making techno. Like you don't listen to that breakdown pressure. We don't need any more breakdowns.
Just younger producers out there, please just listen to Luke Slater's music, especially to Booster, full length thing, and then you understand. You will realize.
Yeah.
The title of today's episode should be called Booster.
Or respectable breakdowns.
Breakdown free.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's one of the interesting things about the way the scene, you know, kind of exploded into the hands in the air situation, and the way new artists perceive what was needed to be successful as a DJ. You need to make that happen, and if you can't make that happen, you are not going to be a good DJ. You have got to get that shot when everyone's got their hands in the air. And I think that's a very dangerous, because the breakdowns will get longer and longer.
Yeah.
You're just going to have,
I think
I'm going to come up with a new genre of techno that's all breakdown.
it's all no breakdown.
It's a complete breakdown, man.
It seems like everybody's just looking for a formula for a shortcut to success at some point.
I think the breakdown is kind of it's like you're building tension as you build a track, and a lot of people feel like to release that tension and to create more momentum, you have to have a breakdown. And I think you don't have to think that way. You can think you can still create tension, and you can relieve that tension without any breakdowns.
Yeah,
we know the best techno records. I mean, this is the whole point: is that you just take out the bass. If you want to
let the DJ make the breakdown.
If you want to make a breakdown in any record, whether it's Jeff Mills or whatever, just take out the bass.
Just take out the bass.
We should do a breakdown-free challenge to producers.
But like, how many?
I think this is the thing, and this is why the best techno records we all know, they have no breakdowns, because you can, if you're a DJ, you make your breakdown.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need someone to tell you when it is. You make it yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the art of mixing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, how many of like really good parties have you been playing at where all you had to do was cut the bass and bring it back, and people are like, go crazy. And just like, this track doesn't need a breakdown.
I think we've made it too easy for the DJ to take all the credit.
That's also, I guess, that's also a good point.
Yeah.
Anyway, Luke, I appreciate the breakdown-free approach. Is what I'm.
Only build-ups.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of them, to be honest. I like records that go on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Me too.
They're really subtle,
Yeah.
Go on, but
Matt is an expert in that too.
Thanks.
Say again, Chris.
Well, Luke, we should use another 2-3 hours to speak to you. It's been so incredibly enlightening to have you on the show. I think we should soon wind it down, because our American friends, which we have 3 on the show, Justin, our producer, Mo and David, they have some sort of celebration going on today, and they need to kill some animals and eat them.
I mean, hey, if you guys want to hang and stay on the show a little bit longer, that's all good. I unfortunately got to run because I got a family thing with Thanksgiving.
So do I.
But
Luke, it's been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're honestly a tremendous inspiration on me personally as a producer. So it's really great to sit and have this chat with you.
All of us. I can second that.
See you on the road.
Yeah.
Hope so.
But thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Luke, thanks so much for being on.
We say good night. Are we back next week? Who's the guest next week?
We're back next week, are we?
Yeah.
We're not finalizing closing down this show here. We'll be.
I don't think we have a guest next week. I don't remember.
You guys will find out. Thank you all for watching. Luke, thanks so much for being here. It's like, especially the story about early peace rock. It's just like, boom, I'm just gonna glow now for 2 hours, trying to make sense of all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers,
See you later.
Man, thank you.
Guys, good night. Thanks. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great Thanksgiving.
I'll eat an extra
Thanks,
turkey
man.
for you, Chris.
Ciao.